speak about it. So I'm going to hand it over to Deepak and Crispine to quickly introduce themselves and lead us through the session today. Welcome again, and over to you, Deepak and Crispine.
Thank you, Jayashree. We're quite,
Thank you, Jay.
Quite excited, anxious, all together to be part of this talk. We hope to do good justice. A little bit about myself. I'm Deepak. I'm a Bangalorean. I have 3 professions. I'm an engineer by qualification, do my IT consulting coaching role where I do leadership coaching consulting. Then I'm a psychotherapist, and I also teach and supervise learning psychotherapy students. I have a clinical practice and supervision practice in Bangalore and across the globe. So this topic is quite important for me. Being a queer person myself, I like to bring in conversations of inclusivity in many aspects of my work, not just in psychotherapy, teaching, but also in coaching and consulting spaces in organizations. So hopefully we've collected some of your questions and grouped them in themes and like to have a dialogue. And I'll let Crispine introduce himself, and then I'll talk a little bit about the structure, and then we'll go from there. Over to you, Crispine.
Thank you, Deepak. And thank you, Jay. I'm honored to be invited to participate today. I do need to correct one thing. I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm a consultant. Although I guess that you could say that on like some level, you do psychotherapy work with organizations, but no, I did TA organizational. I'm a business consultant. I work around themes like strategy, change management, and of course, I live in Berlin, and I realized that I have a completely different frame of reference culturally, and that's why I'm also excited to be here today. And I share with Deepak a lot of things, for example, TA, or our passion for our work, but also the fact that I'm as well part of the queer community. I think, Deepak, also considering the time, it would be good if you tell a little bit about what we're going to do today.
Okay, yeah. What we would like to introduce you, the structure a bit, if it's basically a dialogue format of conversation. We have collected some questions from all of you. We have grouped them in some themes. Crispine will tell us what the themes are. And it's not a therapy conversation. It's not counseling conversation. It is really a dialogue that we would like to bring more and more in organizational space, because most often this is bracketed as sensitive topics, which is not present in professional space. Somehow the idea that we drop our personal, like we shed the skin of personal life as soon as we enter the organization, and we forget about who we are. It's not, right? So part of the dialogue is very oriented to bring back this conversation. So we will do a lot of dialogue between me and Crispine so that we keep it entertaining for both of you, for all of you. So if you have questions, please ask them on the chat, and then we'll pick and respond as we go. Yeah. So Crispine, introduce us to the themes that emerged from the questions, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah. Actually, it was very exciting to see, because there were over 50 questions, and like within the time frame of, let's say, 45, 50 minutes, we will, of course, not be able to address all of them. So not to discount the questions, but we had to have a practical approach. So I kind of like grouped a couple of things together. And I think I was able to identify like a couple of themes. One is gender and sexuality. Another one, like group of questions, is about how to be inclusive. Of course, there were a lot of questions about coaching and sexuality and gender and diversity. And there's something about like the work environment. So those were like a couple of themes that I really liked. And I grouped together all the questions that fall into these themes. there was one that particularly was, I noted that, and the question was, how is this topic any different? And I love that question because that really resonates with me. How is this any different from, other questions? So hopefully at the end of the session, we'll be able to, say something about that. Deepak, what shall we do? Shall we first, as a warming up, put people in breakout rooms?
Yeah, for 5 minutes.
For 5 minutes. And the idea was that we would send you away in breakout rooms with a question, and then we come back after 5 minutes. And the question that or the statement actually that we want to give to you is the following one.
Yeah, Arnab, I saw it. It's come out well. It's come out very well.
No, it
Sorry?
was not for us. It wasn't for us.
Somebody's on a call.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So the statement that we want to give you as a warming up statement is, it is my responsibility to be there for queer people. So it is my responsibility to be there for queer people. And there's actually like 2 answers possible. Well, 3, yes, no, or maybe. If you answer yes or maybe, how or what can you do to be there for queer people? Is that, Deepak, enough introduction for the warming up?
I think so.
Yeah.
Maybe we give about 10 minutes, you think? Because it may be 2. Let's stick to 5 minutes, yeah. Just warm up these thoughts. And
all right, yes. And Deepak and I will probably not participate in the breakout session, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So have a good conversation, everyone. And after the 5 minutes, I'm happy to see you back here together with Deepak.
Okay, I've opened the breakout rooms.
Deepak, you might want to put Chandra,
I changed.
KR in another room. Yeah. With room 16, Chitra is alone there.
Shailesh is okay.
Chitra is alone in room 16. Oh, Shailesh is there, was not joined.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, very good.
Sorry.
KR has company.
Yeah, I did not accept the invitation, Deepak. For
Yeah,
room
I
16.
changed the person in that room, so we're good.
Okay, good.
Shailesh is not joined.
Shailesh, Cheryl, and hi Cheryl, lovely for you to join in. Would you like to join your room?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Oh, but Chitra is now back in room 16.
Yeah, she's alone by herself.
She's alone, yeah.
Maybe we move to room 15. I don't know what. Okay.
Even room 7, Selva is alone because Cheryl is still here in the main room.
Okay, then we can move.
And then room 4, Rashmi is alone for some reason.
It's okay. We're just moving around. Okay. I'm assuming many of the conversations weren't complete, yeah, but we're just getting started and we have only 1 hour. So we just wanted to get you all warmed up to the idea and thoughts. So we'll have more interesting dialogue and from the questions that's come up. Keeping those stimulated thoughts and conversation alive, what we want to introduces the basic definition, right? We talk about sex, gender, and sexuality. What is the difference, right? So I will briefly share that, and then we can go to the next set of questions. Okay, sex is the biological, like, when I'm born with what genitals? Yeah, I'm a male or a female. Okay, that's the sex aspect of it. When we say the sex of the person, that's what biological nature of the person, a biological aspect of the person. Okay. Then gender is socially constructed idea. Yeah. How is it socially constructed? We know in a lot of cosmopolitan hospitals, when the baby is born, in India at least now, if it's, how do you know what baby is that? By looking at the color of the balloons that's decorated in the rooms, right? You can almost say, oh, blue is a boy, pink is a girl, right? And then we have toys which for baby girls. We have, we have toys specific to girls and boys. Yeah, what it's doing is it's creating a reference for children as we're growing up. We have ideas of what a boy and girl should do, what a man and woman should do. Yeah, so it's a socially constructed idea. Gender is what the society wants us to be and feel and do. Okay, it has nothing to do with the sex. Yeah, but most often what we are used to seeing is somebody is born with male genitals behave like a boy, and somebody born with female genitals behave like a girl, right? So that's how we have most often seen. And sexuality is an aspect of the desire. How do my body respond to another body? Yeah. How do I feel romantically towards another person? Right. That is again nothing to do with the gender and sex. Okay. But over many years of conditioning, we've almost said what is normal and what is not normal. Yeah. While normal is a statistical word. Yeah. It has been equated to being natural and unnatural, which is a shame, right? I think what is important for us to know is there is no direct connection to sex, gender, and sexuality. Yeah, each of it is independent. Yeah, and it is conditioned over many years of what one should be doing and feeling. Yeah, that's a very brief, like basic to 101 introduction to the concept, which sets the tone for our conversation. I think Chris Pine.
Yeah.
I'll ask this question to you. Maybe it's not in the plan, and that's a bit of our spontaneity. Like, we work very impromptu. Chris Pine, the question I have for you is, why is it important in coaching consulting space to be aware and to be inclusive, to think about all of this?
I think it's important to have the feeling that you can be, that you can belong, that you are, I'm okay, you're okay, basically in TA terms. Being recognized in who you are is a stroke, basically. If you want to give an unconditional stroke, then, you include no matter the gender or the sexuality or your nationality or your color or like which soccer team you support. Yeah. So it's part of from a humanistic point of view, I would say it's like that you're allowed to exist. I hear some feedback on the
it's gone.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that would be my answer, Deepak. Yeah.
I'd like to be a little more political here and then share the reality, right? I think for me, why it's important is we've all grown up in a heteronormative conditional binary format. There's male, female, there is a boy, a sex, a male, a person born with male genitals needs to be like a boy. and then they need to fall in love with a girl, right? So we have all grown up in such an environment where it is mostly reference to heteronormative idea, right? It could be in small things like color and roles. It could be in things of media, books, entertainment, right? Even the cartoon shows have this princesses and prince falling in love, yeah, and what a woman should do. I mean, for me, it is all that is introjected, and what happens through that process is people who are different from the heteronormative ideology automatically fall out of those references and feel an alienation, feel like they don't belong. And this constant struggle, I think, as an individual, of need to feel normal, like, which is wrongly used, feel like I belong in a group, is not there. And I think that's, for me, also is an important aspect in organizations, because when somebody is different than what we are used to, they're feeling an isolation internally, whether they're explicit or not. I think for us as coaches and organization consultants, to keep that in mind, that creates an alienation, the heteronormative references. We are not immune to that. However, our intent is of utmost respect and dignity and inclusivity. That is not sufficient, because we all are part of that kind of a system.
And what I would like to add, Deepak, is that because in our introductions we both said that we're part of the queer community.
Yeah.
But I mean, my sexuality and my gender are like, they're bits and pieces of my identity. There's so many other things that shape my identity. Yeah. But I do realize that if I publicly identify myself as being a gay man, for example, that there's like a whole set of assumptions about what that means about me or what that says about me. So because I, and some are like kind of like tricky as well. If you say here in the Western world, if you say like you're like a gay man, one of the assumptions is that you probably have a promiscuous life, that you cannot hold a relationship because as a gay man, you like to be very promiscuous, for example. So yeah, that's interesting. And the other thing I would like to say about it is that being queer is part of, if you want that, and unfortunately, like a lot of queer people have that experience. If you want, you can hide your identity, either because you don't feel safe to be open about being queer, etc. But that's a big difference with, for example, like gender or your skin color, because that is something everyone can see immediately. So I'm not sure why I'm also like mentioning that, but that also makes a difference between like skin color is like something you can see immediately, like your sexual identity or your queerness is something that you cannot immediately see. And me personally, for example, until I was about 16, 17, also because of the place where I grew up, I was very happy to hide my identity or my sexuality, because it was not a safe environment to be openly gay. But is it okay, Deepak, if we go a little bit further? Thank you for also like, do the definitions about sex, sexuality, and gender. I would like to mention a couple of the questions that have been asked about around that topic. And one of the things is, so what are the different spectrums of sexuality? And I think there's a lot of different, we all know the alphabet by now. It's like the LGBTQI, A, another I, and plus. There's like more and more segmentation there. But one of the people asked is like, are they learned or are they acquired behaviors? Which I interpret as a nurture versus nature kind of question. What would you like to say to that, Deepak? Is it nurture or nature?
Okay, I'm going to take that question and reframe it. Yeah,
good.
Which is in the raw format. is it a choice? Or is it something that you are born, right? I mean, I would like to respond it in two ways. We live in a heteronormative world. We would give anything to belong there and look like that, right? And we don't never ask this question to a heterosexual person that, hey, was it a choice? Did you learn how to become a heterosexual? We never ask that, right? We assume that it is natural and it is okay, right? That's my first response. My second response, second aspect of that response is that it is who we are, to be straightforward in a response. It's who we are. We ask that question because we believe there is a deviation in the natural progression, right? It's something, it's kind of a mistake that's happened, and we want to get to the root of it in knowing all of this. Believe me, if I can write, I mean, it's in my to-do list on a serious note, how to be straight, how to cure my gayness. I can write 101 ways to do that. Yeah, because what we want is acceptance. We would give anything to do that, right? If one could become straight, if it's just a learned behavior, everybody would want to be straight because it's more accepted. It's more happy in a way. It's not, you don't have to fight the norms and stereotypes and biases, right? So I would imagine if somebody, despite all of that, is saying they're queer, they are queer. It's not about a deviation in the natural progression, right? I mean, that's what I would respond to that. It's not a choice. It's who we are. We don't ask that to a straight person, right? When did you become straight? Or how did you know yours? We don't ask that question because it's not in our frame of reference. Because it is how it is. Yeah. So
you're saying it is nature.
Yeah, it's nature. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, can I add a little bit of a perspective on that?
Yeah.
Because I think I agree with you. Well, I know that I agree with you because it is something biological. And they did research, and thank God there's too many genes involved to, like, in the future create like an on and off switch for like gay or straight. So that's the good news. It's like too complex, but scientists were able to identify, a group of genes that are different. But I still think, Deepak, that there's also a nurture element in it, because let's be honest, I think it is easier to be gay or to be lesbian or to be bisexual or to be queer in, for example, San Francisco, California, United States of America, than in, well, let's say, in a lot of African countries, there's still like a death penalty on like being gay.
Yeah.
So I do agree that it is nature, that this is not a choice, but that, queer people are born queer, and that straight people actually are born straight, and that the environment determines how comfortable you are with that.
Yeah. And I think what I want to emphasize here when you're saying that is about the research, right? It's like, okay, I'll come to that a little later. But what I wanted to say here is coming out is a process. It's not an event, right? Like when you're saying, what occurred to me is we need to figure out when you're working with clients and coachees, coming out doesn't become the goal. That is not the nirvana, right? That's not that's not a sign of acceptance, because I know a lot of my colleagues think that, accepting yourself means when you come out and tell out loud in the world that you are gay. I mean, no, it's not, because it's a process. Accepting to oneself is the beginning, in a way, to come fully into their existence. And I think why I'm saying emphasizing more is for us as coaches, when coaches or aspiring coaches or mental health professionals working in the field need to be aware of the risks that they encounter and that's not always pleasant, right? I worked with an organizational coachee once who said if ever he came out to his parents, he would be beaten to death, period. It was not a joke. It was not even an assumption. It was true. So you can't attach self-acceptance, self-love to coming out as a process. It needs to be in its own time and a choice the person has to come out or not. I mean, even today, I'm quite vocal. I write and speak. And every time I negotiate with my social circle internally, is it safe enough for me to come out or not? So I think we need to, I think that point I wanted to really emphasize when you were saying about nature, nurture, safety.
Yeah, and also like if you know that your parents, for example, are going to have difficulties with it, and let's say that you went to university and you're studying and your parents are supporting you, don't come out of the closet. Wait until you finish your degree, and then by the time you're like economically independent, then you can redecide if you want to come out or not. But like, it's very important for queer people, I think, to create a safe space there. Yeah. And one of the other things I would like to say, but I realized that this is not only like a time aspect, like modern times first to past times, but also I think geographically. I had people visiting this past weekend. It was a friend of mine that I know for many years, and she brought her 2 children with her. One is 11, one is 15. And the 15-year-old one just told his mom that he's bisexual, but that was like completely not an issue for him. It was just like an announcement. He didn't come out. He just told his mother like, "Yeah, I'm bisexual." It was like so different from when I was young, and it was still kind of like expected that you do the whole coming out thing. I would share that under modern trends, but I would also like to say that it depends on where you are in the world.
And I think, sorry, I want to say why, I have a reason, I have a logic for why that is so easy for that generation. While 80s and 90s kids were closeted and figuring out what this is, who am I? Like, I didn't even have the language until 20. These kids are growing up on a lot of good content, which is on Netflix and Amazon Primes, and which has more inclusive language and somebody they can relate to, and there's a reference that is being created.
There's role models. There's more visibility.
Yes, exactly.
Totally.
Exactly. And that's precisely why it's important for us to be affirmative in the consulting and coaching groups, because
Deepak, that's a good segue, because I want to go also with an eye on the time. I want to go to the next topic, which is about coaching. And one of the questions is, someone said, what if this is an awkward conversation talking about this? How would you address that, Deepak? How, if people feel uncomfortable, like either the client or the coach, how to deal with that?
I think take a deep breath first, I would imagine, because it's not an easy topic to talk sometimes. And acknowledge that it is difficult. If you are feeling awkward about it, say it is not something that I'm prepared for. Be real and be informed about this. I think one of the important things as mental health professionals in coaching, consulting, or psychotherapy or counseling profession, we need to take the responsibility of being more informed about these topics. So I would imagine coaches to be informed, at least the basic ideas of the gender, sexuality, the life stresses. Why is it important? I think that goes to the next question, which is the super question of the evening. Why is it important, right? So I think we need to be, for me, to acknowledge the realness of the awkward situation is important, because it brings in, let's look at it right like this. If I'm a client of yours, if I'm your coachee, I feel shameful about being queer, being gay, and I'm holding that shame. All I want to do is to share with you how shameful it is for me. Now, with all the, no offense to any modes of psychology. But if I come with all big bang, if you as my coach, Crispine, respond to it with such a positive, yeah, it's okay, it's comfortable, don't, it's fine, I see you, you're shutting down an aspect of that person. You're not letting them talk about the shame they feel. You need to create a space for them to talk. You don't do that by covering the awkwardness by positivity. You acknowledge, take a moment, let them share, let them lead the show, let them tell how they feel about it, and then you can respond to it whether you feel you're accepting or not accepting. Because when you go with such huge positivity, it's an overload for them, because they're in double whammy at that moment. Yeah, because they're saying, oh gosh, I'm feeling shameful about this, and here this person who is in best interest of me is feeling so proud of me that how can I even tell I feel shameful? I mostly adapt to it and feel terrible internally again. So I would say just provide the space for them to talk about how they feel being.
And what if you, as a coach, suspect that someone is queer, but someone is still in the closet or does not talk about it? How would you open up a space to talk about that topic with your client?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's always a tricky question. I make some judgment calls of whether they're ready or not. Yeah. What I would do for sure in my intake questionnaires or intake forms that I take for all my coaching clients on setting the goal, I leave the gender aspect open instead of male and female, and I ask what pronoun do you want to be. So you need to if you are the you need to radiate some information that you're more affirmative and inclusive coach. Yeah, that is in small ways in how your intake forms are, how you're inviting them, how not assuming if they say that okay, if they're talking about a relationship issue, not to assume it's a heterosexual relationship, to talk about in neutral, gender neutral language. What does your partner do? Create that kind of an environment. Because I remember one of the very recent work I was doing with a coachee. For a long time, the coachee was saying, I'm in a complicated relationship. Yeah, she identifies herself as female. I didn't assume the gender. So I said, okay, how is it's complicated relationship? We coined a name for that relationship instead of assuming. And after 6 sessions, she told me she was lesbian and she's just outside exploring. It's important for us to not assume the gender, not assume heterosexual relationships, pronouns, invite that space. And if I have a doubt, I will bite my tongue and hold the doubt. I will not ask. Yeah. I will not do anything about it until they're ready, because sometimes it is best to wait. By giving out these signals. Yeah.
So it's important to be aware of, like, let's say, bias. Everyone has bias. It's not a judgment. We all have like assumptions and bias, and also the language, I guess, that we use.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that like, if we look at like being queer and like the workplace, what's like the positive, what would be the positive impact of embracing LGBT friendly work environment? How would that help an organization?
Okay, it's a good question. I come from both psychotherapy and coaching space. Yeah. So what I think is important is when somebody is queer and not feeling safe, they're not fully there. They're constantly negotiating every day in social environments. I mean, I know from my own experience working in organization when I wasn't sure, when I was struggling with my own identity. In social conversations, it's awkward. In the coffee table conversations, do you have a girlfriend? They assume, right? And you need to dodge that bullet. So I would almost all the time pick my coffee and run away from it because I need to go to the next meeting. You see, that's funny now if I look back, but at that moment it isn't, because you're always holding a ticking time bomb with you. And when I have a ticking time bomb,
yeah, people don't want to be in this. If you have the feeling that you can't be open,
yeah,
then you don't want to be in the spotlight. So
exactly.
the example you give would be like during a break in like the lunchroom or whatever. But I totally recognize what you say, and in the beginning, I wouldn't feel comfortable like during like a formal meeting.
Yeah.
When you brainstorm, it's like, oh, if I open my mouth now, people will like focus attention on me, and I don't want to be seen. Almost, it's like yeah.
And the problem, Crispine, is people like me who love to talk. And then you're holding the time bomb with you and you can't talk, because every social conversation, if you all just take a moment and look at your past 24 hours to 48 hours social conversation, I'm not talking work, it will be something about your sexuality. It would be about your kids. It would be about your spouse. It would be about your mothers-in-law, fathers-in-law, sisters-in-law, or something which is talking about your sexuality, which is indirectly telling about your sexuality. Imagine for a queer person who's struggling and doesn't want to come out, all of that is gone. 60 to 70% of social conversation we need to dodge. And the point I want to close the just told what you asked, what I wanted to say is, when I'm holding a ticking time bomb, I can never be fully safe enough to bring my full potential in the organization.
So do you think, and I know I'm going to ask a rhetorical question because I know the answer already, but do you think a company would be more productive if they embrace all identities, basically?
I think so, because you see, you're taking away the stress of ticking time bombs, right? You're taking away the stress factor that is there just by keeping gender neutral bathrooms, for example. We're talking so much about being gay, we hardly talk about being trans, because you see, there's very less representation of trans people in organizations, at least in India. Right. So I think there's a lot of conversations that needs to be opened up to create safety, because it is, sorry, my eyes went to a question. One of the participants was asking, how do we know that they need counseling or psychologist and not coaching?
Yeah, I was seeing that in the chat as well.
Okay. Do you want to respond to that, Crispine?
Well, I want to respond to that. Yes and no, because actually, I would like to go back to one of the questions that I mentioned that was asked, like, how is this topic any different? Because also with regard to this question, like if a client comes to you and has issues or questions around sexuality, would you handle that differently? The assessment if someone needs coaching or psychotherapy, would you handle that differently from, like, if someone says, I'm not happy about the region where I live, or other issues that someone can have. So that, I mean, from my perspective, if I would feel unqualified to work with a client, because I think the topic is too big, for example, for like consulting, or, as a joke, I said, I do psychotherapy for organizations. But if I don't joke for a moment here, I have had leadership teams where like the game level was so severe that I was like, I can't work here. They need they need like couple therapy almost, like, for that board. But like, how to determine if someone needs coaching or psychotherapy? I would say, like, if you are not qualified to do it, but that has nothing to do with like sexuality per se, then you should probably refer someone. What would you say, Deepak, to that question?
Yeah. I think I would also go with that, if I'm qualified enough to hold that conversation. And what is my coaching contract? What is the coaching agenda that I have with the client? Yeah, I would always go back to that. Because in psychotherapy, I can keep an open agenda and then work at a broader level. But if they've come for a specific thing and this is propped in, maybe I would scope and de-scope that. Yeah, sometimes I've also done that for my clients, that, saying that, hey, this needs a little more depth of past and, your old trauma and all of that. So you will need a psychotherapy work and engage with a psychotherapist than with me. Yeah.
The sad thing that I do want to say that, and it's not only to provoke people to think about this, but the sad thing is we are now talking about why gay people or queer people need psychotherapy. And I think that question is only relevant because it's straight people, it's a straight society who makes it so impossible for queer people sometimes to be. So, in general, this is not from like an angry point of view, but more of like, I am a little upset about it sometimes, that I think like, actually, it's not the queer people who have a problem here, people. It's like the straight people who have a problem here, creating a space for everyone. And I think it's important to mention that, like, if we ask all of these questions without discounting them, by the way, that like, from what point of view, from like what kind of reference are you asking these questions? If you would like turn them around 180 degrees, would you still ask the same questions? That's for me always when we do these sessions as well, Deepak, the thing, like, I really would like to invite people to almost use that Martian view that Byrne also, like, although Byrne was not like, he was not great when it came to like,
inclusivity.
I don't want to open up a whole new can of worms here, but like Byrne was not that inclusive. But I think his theory and his models, of course, can be used to like look at these topics and think like, oh yeah, how if we like completely change the perspective on this question and think like, how do we ensure equality for straight people in the workplace? And everyone will be like, huh, what? Why do you ask that question? What? Huh? That's actually what I think, what I would strive for, that like in 10, 15 years from now, people would say about this workshop, for example, like, what a ridiculous topic to talk about, kind of.
Yeah. I think one of the things what you're saying is place the problem in its origin, right? Because it's structural issue. It's not a queer issue. And I think there was a question in the place, if you had high-performing executive that was in the closet, how might a coach support them? What support they need. I mean, basically just going with their flow, right? It's the choice to be in the closet. I think it's really important we go with the flow of what is my contract, because that defines my professional boundaries. I'm aware of the time. We are 7 minutes to
Me
close.
too. And Sananda raised her hand, her or his hand.
Yes.
Hi, Crispin and Deepak. Thank you for the session. I think we needed it very much, because there is so much opaqueness, especially in India, around this. So thank you so much, and also for being so open and vulnerable to us. I have a follow-up question to the psychotherapy question, actually, which is that I see two ways. One is that, your client may come out to you in a very matter-of-fact way, which could be that, just because they have that relationship with you and they're just sharing that information, right? In which case, one thing to do would be is to say that, thank you for trusting me with that information. Would you like to talk about it? And then move on from there. But if the client is struggling with that question themselves, as you said, struggling with the concept of, self-love, self-acceptance, how fair would it be for me as a coach to work with them on that? Because, coaching doesn't deal with past traumas. Coaching is very much rooted in the present and equipping them and empowering them to deal with the future. It may not necessarily help doing that also very often. It may just solve the problem in the moment. So how fair is it for a coach, even if the coach is comfortable doing it or in some form equipped, to handle something which is dependent on not just one person, but there is an entire world that the client has, and a world that I as a coach am never going to be maybe exposed to. because I don't see that world, not just because of, gender or sexuality or anything, but because I'm never going to, my life is never going to coincide with that world, because they bring a limited part of themselves to the session.
Deepak, do you want to answer?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, Sunanda. I think we all struggle as coaches, especially for me, it's quite complicated because I'm also a psychotherapist. So where do I draw my line is to see when they've shared that and the coaching agenda, does it have a connection? Yeah, and if I can make the connection in the mind about the coaching agenda that they have bought in. For example, they say that I lack confidence and to take up this new role and I'm struggling with it and I don't know. And then they say this, and if I think this is a possible connection, maybe to offer it as an insight and drop there and say, hey, do you see a connection there? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And leave it at that point to work and scope that work for just the coaching agenda. I know it's not enough, like you're saying, but that's the ethical obligation that we as coaches have. And to say and to help them with resources that, what, if you want more understanding of this and little more holding space, you can take psychotherapy services, which is available. And there are a lot of, I can share with Jayashree good resources in India to send the clients to. Very, very good support groups, which are there for 25, 30 years now, which offer good resource support. I would work like that, Sunanda.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, and look forward to those, resources.
Yeah. Deepak, can I just quickly mention as a resource the Unpinked Conference on the 15th of September that
yes. We can
deals
send
with
that details. No, we can send the details along with that to Jayashree.
Yes, it's a free conference and it deals with the workplace and queer people. I'm aware that some other people also raised their hands, but I also see that our time is almost up, Deepak. So how to address that?
I don't know.
Jay, what do you think?
Yeah. So if there are folks who want to have a second round of conversation with you guys, is that an option available for us to find another time?
We could, I suppose.
I'm sorry for putting on the spot and asking you.
No, I'm
live,
responding.
but,
it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. I would be okay, I suppose.
Okay. So would you like to speak later and find a time, or would you like to give an alternative time and we can announce it to the group, and I will set up the process and send the invites to those who are interested. Okay. How would you like to do that, Deepak?
Because I don't have my calendar away.
Okay, so then can I connect with you offline and figure that out?
Sure.
Yeah. I'm really like from Europe where I live, and again, this is a different cultural frame. I'm super excited about like the kind of questions and about the kind of dialogue that happens in these workshops, and I'm humble and happy that I can do that little contribution there. So thank you very much for letting me experience this.
Thank you, Crispine, for joining me, and thank you, Jayashree, for organizing, and all of you for being, participating in a way to ask those questions, because those questions led to our responses. We group them in teams and we try to respond. So thank you, and keep these conversations alive. Thank you, Jayashree, for organizing and calling us on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for coming down today, Deepak and Crispine. And I know what time wasn't enough, and I'm hoping we can have another round of conversation with you guys that we will fix offline. And I would like to invite Rashmi Shetty, who's also part of the board. If you haven't met her, Deepak and Crispine, for a closing remarks. So Rashmi handles on the board. I handle learning. Rashmi handles Member Connect. So over to you, Rashmi, for the closing remarks for today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Crispin and Deepak. It was amazing. As a podcaster with a lot of hesitation, I had approached someone who was gay during the Pride month. And I have done a lot of interviews, but this was one subject that I was so nervous about. But I think it ended up being one of the most vulnerable and beautiful conversations I've ever had. I think, like you said, I think you hit the nail on the head saying that the problem is with those straight. I think we need a huge rewind and more conversations like this where I truly am grateful for both of you being so authentic and vulnerable. And you opened a lot of doors for us to now bring in the conversation out of our closets, not yours, ours. And I think the more we have such conversations, the more we will understand that the problem is within and not without. So thank you so much for opening the most important door and telling us, just ask us and we can do the rest. Thank you. Thank you very much for holding the space so powerfully for us.
Thank you, Rashmi, for such kind words. Very
Yeah,
always happy to do these conversations.
I'd love to have another conversation with you. Thanks a lot.
We're glad.
Thanks, Jayashree.
Thank you, everyone. And yes, Deepak, and Crispine, thank you for concluding it so beautifully within the available time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Deepak. Bye, Crispin.
Bye, Chitra.
Jayashree, Rashmi, Crispin.
Bye,
Deepak,
bye.
Bye.
Hi, John.
Bye.
I thought, Deepak, you had another session to
In
go
15
to.
minutes, I need to go get into. So, Crispine,